Are you a fan of finding out how machines work? Do you like to build Legos or use construction tools? How about a fascination with computers? If your answer is yes to any one of those questions, then you may want to consider joining the science club at your school. Government is implementing several programs for the popularization of science in schools across Jamaica. Find out more by visiting the website of the Scientific Research Council, src.gov.jm. We continue your Jamaica Magazine program with a word of advice, followed by the news.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Monday, May 16, 2022. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark is appealing to public sector workers to exercise patience and calmness as stakeholders work to complete the compensation restructuring for central government within the next 6 months. In a message broadcast last evening, Dr. Clark urged restraint against further industrial action, which could interrupt and reverse the country's economic recovery if services were disrupted.
Such a reversal would set Jamaica back tremendously, costing jobs. This would negatively impact us all, from the decline in government revenues that would follow and the cuts in budgetary expenditure that would then become necessary. Jamaica cannot afford this. On behalf of all Jamaicans, therefore, I appeal to all public sector employees for patience and for calm.
He also gave an assurance that no public sector employee would be worse off at the end of the process.
We are aware that in any set of proposals designed to cover 110,000 public sector employees, there could be cases where the proposed changes lead to less net pay. What the assurance instead means, however, is that wherever through reasoned, objective, and data-driven feedback, it can be proven that someone would indeed be worse off, we will work to find a fix.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is also assuring public sector workers that the compensation restructuring exercise will be fair and equitable. While addressing a recent function, he said government was committed to a process that would see public sector workers getting their fair share of the country's prosperity.
There is no need for any type of action that will dislocate the state, dislocate the growth, the resurgence, the recovery which is underway. I urge reason. This is not an unwilling and uncaring government.
In other news, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Desmond McKenzie says the newly opened multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art Montego Bay Fire Station is a game-changer for the Jamaica Fire Brigade. The station was completed under the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, JSIF's Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Program.
It is also designed to ensure that the more than 200,000 residents, business owners, and others that are in the capture area of this fire station can be better protected by having the capacity right here on Barnett Street to respond to disasters.
The facility houses a high-tech gym, offices, dormitory, and accommodation for over 170 firefighters. During Friday's opening ceremony, Minister McKenzie said it represented government's commitment to improve the working conditions of firefighters.
This administration is committed in ensuring that the men and women of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and I want to commend them for working in conditions that demonstrate their ability and commitment and loyalty to the job.
In related news, ground will soon be broken for the construction of a new fire station in Ulster Spring, Trelawney.
We are going to be breaking grounds in another 3 weeks for the construction of a brand new facility in Ulster Spring in Trelawney. Balaclava in St. Elizabeth will be our next location. And we will be opening shortly, not one, but two brand new facilities in Port Maria, in St. Mary, and in Yallas, in St. Thomas.
Minister Mackenzie has also announced plans to upgrade the existing fire station in Montego Bay to provide proper working environment for firefighters attached to the division. Make Jamaica Crisp and Clean is the slogan for this year's Labor Day activities, which will focus on the protection of our heritage and environment under the broad Jamaica 60 theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness. In keeping with that focus, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Olivia Grange, is urging the country to prepare for the Jamaica 60 Jubilee celebrations by cleaning up and beautifying communities, landmarks and public spaces. The National Labor Day project will be the renovation of Mandela Park in Halfway Tree. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will spearhead the national project, which will involve landscaping, masonry, carpentry, painting, electrical works, lighting, as well as disinfecting and sanitizing.
And don't make this any ordinary cleanup like we have done in the past. This must be a special. Clean the corners, the crevice, the nook and the crannies. Get rid of the garbage. Protect your environment. And remember, cleanliness is next to godliness.
Labor Day wraps up Workers' Week activities, which kicks off on May 18th with the unveiling of the bust of Agnes Aggie Bernard at the Workers' Monument on Port Royal Street. The Workers' Week and Labor Day National Thanksgiving Church service will be held on Sunday, May 22 at the Emmanuel Apostolic Church. On Labor Day, May 23, floral tributes will be held at National Heroes Park in Kingston. And finally, a resounding 21-gun salute punctuated the air as Jamaica officially welcomed the President of the Republic of India, His Excellency the Honorable Ramnath Kovind, to the island on Sunday. President Kovind is paying a 4-day state visit to Jamaica. He was greeted at the Norman Manley International Airport by a delegation of state and government officials led by the Governor-General and Prime Minister. President Kovind was accompanied by First Lady Savita Kovind and other delegates from India. His visit coincides with Jamaica's 60th independence anniversary celebrations and also marks 60 years of diplomatic relations between Jamaica and India. On one of the first stops of his visit, the Indian president laid a wreath at the shrine of Jamaica's first national hero, Marcus Garvey. He's also scheduled to pay a courtesy call on the Governor-General and meet with Prime Minister Andrew Holness, as well as hold an engagement with the Indian community in Jamaica. President Kovind will leave Jamaica on Wednesday, May 18. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark appealed to public sector workers for patience and calm during the compensation restructuring exercise and gave a timeline of 6 months for completion. Here's the full address.
My fellow Jamaicans, good evening. Many of us would have observed the incidences of industrial action in the public sector last week with concern. Jamaica has shown great resilience in the face of monumental and historic economic adversity brought on by the global COVID-19 pandemic, and today we are experiencing a recovery of jobs and economic output way ahead of other countries in our region and in a manner that defies our historical experience. Companies are expanding, new hotels are being built, and residential and commercial and warehousing construction continues to increase. For the first time in living memory, many businesses are actually reporting a shortage in available labor. Jamaica is undoubtedly moving forward, though we still have a long way to go. However, this much needed economic recovery can easily be interrupted and reversed if services are disrupted due to industrial action. Such a reversal would set Jamaica back tremendously, costing jobs. This would negatively impact us all, from the decline in government revenues that would follow and the cuts in budgetary expenditure that would then become necessary. Jamaica cannot afford this. On behalf of all Jamaicans, therefore, I appeal to all public sector employees for patience and for calm. We understand your apprehension. We understand your fear. We know that you have been waiting a long time for the compensation restructuring reform, and many are now anxious about what it might mean for you. We know you have been hearing things, sharing figures, viewing calculations, and there may be some misunderstandings about how this will all work. It is certainly possible that in some instances you are receiving partial and incomplete information out of context. I humbly ask that you avoid conclusions at this point. There is a consultative process underway. Things will be much clearer once these consultations with your union or bargaining group are completed. For a complex and ambitious reform such as this restructuring of public sector compensation across all of government for 110,000 public sector employees organized into 47 central government bargaining units and 140 public bodies, there has to be an established process as we drive towards implementation. The process is that for those who work in central government, civil servants, police, teachers, nurses, doctors, dentists, other healthcare workers, correctional officers, firefighters, etc., we have been engaged in consultations with your union and bargaining group representatives. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has already met with 45 out of the 47 central government bargaining groups and unions. You will have the opportunity to provide feedback, which will be considered in the second round of consultations, which will shortly begin. There is therefore an established mechanism through which concerns, misconceptions, and/or misunderstandings can be addressed. Please take us at our word that no public sector employee will be worse off. Some persons have responded to this assurance with calculations, valid or invalid, that supposedly demonstrate a decline in net pay as a supposed refutation of this assurance. This is misplaced. The assurance is not a statement that contends that everyone is better off with the proposals on the table. We are aware that in any set of proposals designed to cover 110,000 public sector employees, there could be cases where the proposed changes lead to less net pay. What the assurance instead means, however, is that wherever through reasoned, objective, and data-driven feedback, it can be proven that someone would indeed be worse off, we will work to find a fix. For public sector employees employed to public bodies, I know that you have heard where your colleagues in central government are in receipt of information about the compensation restructuring, and your management and your representatives have not yet been able to tell you when your consultations will begin. This has been met with displeasure. I completely understand that. For those public bodies such as the National Water Commission, the National Irrigation Commission, the Broadcasting Commission, Civil Aviation Authority, PICA, Petrojam, among others, where the agitation for reclassification exercises predates the commencement of this all-of-government compensation restructuring reform, it is particularly irksome for you that from your perspective, Now that compensation restructuring is here, you now seem to be at the back of the queue. The irony for you is too much to absorb. I understand that too. Given the huge scope of this exercise, however, and its complexity, for better or worse, we decided to conclude with central government first and then engage with public bodies. Given current timelines, we anticipate that engagement with public bodies will occur within the next 6 months, similar to the timeline provided to the NWC. Though this timeline may seem far away, I ask you to consider that such a comprehensive reform with respect to public sector compensation has no precedent in Jamaica. It has never happened before. We have been ambitious in looking after your interests. We therefore ask for patience. We need the same patience which allowed the hard-working teams to complete 4 years of work setting up the policy framework for this reform, engaging the public sector about its key elements, procuring and engaging the services of multinational consultants, collecting and analyzing data on 110,000 jobs, designing and completing surveys, modeling, forecasting, and communicating. After enduring the road phase of this reform marathon, we have now entered the stadium and are actually on the home stretch in full visibility of the finish line. It is supreme patience that got us here. As close as we are, we cannot now afford to collapse on the track. Instead, fueled by that same patience, together we can make it across the finish line. We are further strengthening our partnership with our trade union partners and bargaining groups, with whom we have achieved tremendous things over the years. This process is and will be inclusive and will consider all views. We have approached the restructuring of public sector compensation with great ambition. Working with our partners in the trade unions and bargaining groups, we are doing what has never been done before in Jamaica. The public sector has been through a long night, and the day of reform finally approaches. But, my fellow Jamaicans, it is always darkest just before dawn. Let not the darkness of this brief pre-dawn period lead us to stumble as a society. Kicking our own can of milk over, even if unintended, will only delay the emergence of daylight. And even then, with spilt milk, daylight would not be sustained. Patience and orderly discourse, on the other hand, will allow a sustainable dawn to emerge. You can rely on the partnership between the government, trade unions, and bargaining groups to secure the interests of all public sector employees and the wider Jamaican society as we advance this ambitious, necessary, and important reform. I will continue to keep you updated. God bless you, and God bless Jamaica.
As we celebrate our children in May, we provide an inspiration for the deaf segment of our school population.
Born deaf. My mother had German measles, rubella, and either I could have had a physical disability, be blind, but I became deaf, and I'm happy with it. I'm perfect with it. My mother, She was really concerned. She didn't know where to put me. St. Christopher's School for the Deaf was too far. It was in Brownstone. So my mother held me at home till I was about 6 years old. And I found Daniel Williams School for the Deaf. I was placed there at 6 and continued from there. The first time I signed, or the first time I witnessed sign language, was 6. Before that, it was lip reading and gestures. The children would sign, but the teachers didn't sign. But I was good at lip reading, but the education aspect of it, learning, that wasn't a part of it. We were focusing on being able to speak and being with speech therapists, and that's why hence not having the great education I should. I was working at Jamaica Flour Mills. It was a good job, but communication was always a challenge. Sometimes there are a lot of misunderstandings. So I decided to resign. I didn't work for 1 year, and then I had my son after that year. And then JD called me, Jamaica Association for the Deaf. It wasn't my goal to be a mentor, but it has truly been beneficial because the children need that. They need role models, they need mentors. I encourage the deaf children to have deaf pride, to know that they can. You're on the same level as a hearing person. It doesn't matter that you can't hear. You have a lot of deaf adults who are successful, and you can achieve. You can get the education that you want, you can do anything that you want, you can achieve. Don't feel like you can't because you're deaf. The same hearing people who are teasing you and saying you're dumb and all these things, don't focus on that, focus on yourself and focus on improving yourself. With sign language, everyone is included. That's my philosophy. So that means hearing people have to learn how to sign so that they can respect the deaf community, and the deaf person himself or herself will feel pride. Because when I think back on when I was growing up, how I was forced to lip read and forced to talk, I'm happy to see now that sign language is there and everybody is using it, and that's my philosophy.
What a way you're full of our roots and culture. That was in Jamaica 60. Jamaica 60? What a piece of news, Miss Matty. I feel like my heart going bust up.
Just in, the island of Jamaica is on the verge of celebrating its 60th year of independence.
I only way of celebrating it. They say the people them come here, you know. But you see, when our people decide, say the other people them free paper, burn up, them say if it's war, start it, whatever. We all collect medal pants of it, you know.
Medal.
Amount of tongue we give them, you know.
The celebrations are slated to begin on January 1st, 2022. Organized by the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. We have more in this report.
I am on site and planning activities are ablaze. Persons are advised to download the Reggae Jamaica app to know what it activities for the Jamaica 60 celebration.
Yeah. I download the app to get the updates then.
Safeguard your child or ward from this infection through frequent and proper hand washing. Find out more next.
Deworming is the process of giving worm medicine to an individual to get rid of parasites such as roundworm and tapeworm. While the focus is usually on children, adults should also be dewormed. Consultant pediatrician at the Bustamante Hospital for Children, Dr. Sandrika Young-Peart, tells us why this process is important, signs to look for, and the impact of these worms to our health.
When we talk about worms, we're talking about multiple different types. We may talk about the roundworm, the pinworm, or we can talk about the whipworm. And these are just some of the few worms that exist. The worms can actually cause a disease burden on our society, and the complications of having worm infestations are numerous and problematic. It affects how our children may concentrate and may be able to learn. There are actually documented findings that it actually affects your cognitive and your physical development and your ability to concentrate in school. And so it's actually important that we actually rid our children of these parasites. According to the WHO, approximately 800 million children are actually affected by worms each year. So what are some of the signs that a person may have worms? Symptoms could be what we commonly think about, like grinding of the teeth. They may be itching their anus, right? They may actually have weight loss. They may feel very tired and fatigued. And these are just some of the symptoms that may give you an indication that your child may have worm. They may not have any signs at all. Or they can have other signs and symptoms, such as vomiting, abdominal swelling or distension, diarrhea, or constipation. If the worms actually form balls, they can actually block the intestines, and that can either cause constipation and cause the child to vomit. They can also present with wheezing, and we may think they are actually asthmatics, but it's actually the worms that have migrated into the lungs to cause obstruction of the airway and cause the child to wheeze. So how do they get infected? They may get infected either by eating or drinking contaminated water or food. If there is inadequate or improper waste disposal, and if we don't wash our hands before we eat or drink food. And there's a particular worm that you can actually get if you actually walk barefooted. So that is also something to bear in mind. And so it's actually important that we actually give our children worm medicine so we can actually target getting rid of these worms and actually reducing the worm burden in our society. You can deworm your children twice per year. You should actually give them worm medicine, and all the persons who are in the household should also get the worm medicine at the same time. It is important that our adults also be treated or dewormed, because we can be asymptomatic, meaning that we don't have any symptoms at all, but we can still be carriers of worms. And when we excrete or pass our feces, especially sometimes when we do it inappropriately, we may pass out the eggs of these worms. Then our cows or poultry or pigs may actually ingest these when they feed. And then that's a vicious cycle. And should our children be playing in the areas where waste is inadequately disposed, then they too can actually pick up the eggs or the larvae on their fingers. And if they don't wash their hands before they eat, or while they're in the midst of playing, they may actually put their fingers in their mouth, then they too can actually ingest these worms. So how can you prevent your child from getting worms? It's difficult, but there are some basic tips that we can actually do to reduce the chance of our children getting these serious worm infections and having the complications. Basic hand washing before eating our food, allowing our children not to walk barefooted, allowing our children not to play with the pets, especially if their pets are not treated quite frequently. And importantly, proper hygiene. Ensure that our waste is disposed properly. So it's pretty important that we all get on board as adults so we can actually reduce the worm burden and the impact on our society.
That's all the time we have left on this station. Be sure to join us tomorrow around about the same time for another program packed with your edification in mind. If tomorrow is too far away, visit us online at jis.gov.jm or our YouTube channel. And keep in touch with us, won't you? Email Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm. Download our mobile app and visit our social media pages. On behalf of the entire team here at the JIS, I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.